It was supposed to be an ordinary morning at the airport. People rushing to catch flights, coffee in hand, announcements echoing through the terminal. But everything changed when 14 police dogs suddenly broke formation near Gate 14. They weren't barking at luggage or searching a suspicious bag. They were surrounding a 6-year-old black boy standing quietly by himself, holding his boarding pass and a small backpack. For a moment, no one moved. Then chaos. The dogs started barking wildly, their handlers shouting commands that went ignored. The boy froze, confusion and fear flashing across his face. "Please, I didn't do anything," he stammered, taking a trembling step back. A nearby officer raised his hand. "Stay still, son," he ordered firmly as more security rushed in. Travelers pulled out their phones. Some whispered, others shouted. Nobody understood what was going on. Was he in danger? Did the dogs smell something on him? Or were they trying to protect him from something no one else could see? Stay with me until the end, because what happened next would leave the entire terminal speechless and turn this boy into the center of a story the whole world would soon talk about. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get into it. The morning sun filtered through the massive glass windows of Denver International Airport, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Terminal B hummed with its usual rhythm. Business travelers clutched their phones. Families herded children toward security checkpoints. And the familiar voice of departure announcements created a backdrop of organized chaos that airports are known for. Officer Marcus Thompson had been working the K-9 unit for 8 years. He'd seen everything: drug smugglers, weapons, explosive devices, missing children. His German Shepherd, Zeus, was one of the finest detection dogs in the state. Trained to sniff out narcotics, explosives, and even track missing persons, Zeus had never given a false alert. Not once. That morning, Marcus was leading a routine security sweep with 13 other K-9 officers. It was part of a new federal initiative following recent security concerns. 14 dogs, 14 handlers, moving through Terminal B in perfect formation, like a well-oiled machine. The dogs moved with precision, their handlers keeping them on tight leashes as they weaved between passengers and luggage carts. Travelers often stopped to watch, some taking photos of the impressive display. Children pointed excitedly at the powerful German Shepherds, their tails wagging as they worked. But near Gate 14, something changed. Zeus suddenly stopped. His ears perked up, his body went rigid, and his nose began working furiously. Marcus felt the leash tighten as Zeus turned toward the waiting area where passengers sat reading newspapers and scrolling through their phones. That's when Marcus saw him. A small, black boy, maybe 6 years old, sitting alone on a bench near the window. He wore a bright yellow shirt, blue jeans, and sneakers that looked too big for his feet. In his lap sat a small dinosaur backpack, and clutched in his tiny hands was a boarding pass that seemed enormous compared to his small fingers. The boy's eyes were wide, scanning the terminal as if searching for someone. He looked lost, maybe scared, but he wasn't crying. He just sat there, perfectly still, like he was trying his best to be invisible. Zeus took a step forward, then another. His tail wasn't wagging. This wasn't playful curiosity. This was something else entirely. Marcus frowned. "What is it, boy?" he whispered, but Zeus was already moving. One by one, the other dogs began to react. Ranger, a Belgian Malinois trained in explosive detection, turned sharply toward the boy. Then Storm, a golden retriever cross-trained for search and rescue. Within seconds, all 14 dogs were focused on the same target. The small boy sitting alone. Officer Sarah Chen, Zeus's handler for the day's operation, noticed the shift immediately. "Marcus, what's going on?" she called out through her radio. "I don't know," Marcus replied, his voice tense. "They're all reacting to something." The dogs began to move in unison, creating a loose circle around the boy's bench. Their movements were deliberate, controlled, but intense. It was formation behavior, the kind they used when securing a high-risk target or protecting someone in danger. Passengers started to notice. A businessman lowered his newspaper, watching with growing concern. A mother pulled her daughter closer, whispering reassurances. An elderly couple stood up from their seats, craning their necks to see what was happening. The boy looked up from his boarding pass, his eyes growing wider as he realized 14 massive dogs were now surrounding him. His small hands began to tremble. "Please," he said in a voice so quiet it was barely audible above the terminal noise. "I didn't do anything wrong." That's when the barking started. Zeus was the first, a deep, commanding bark that echoed through the gate area like thunder. Then Ranger joined in, followed by Storm, and within seconds all 14 dogs were barking in unison. Not aggressive snarling, but urgent, insistent barking, the kind that demanded attention. The sound was deafening. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Phones were pulled out, and cameras started recording. Security guards rushed toward the scene, their radios crackling with urgent communications. Marcus tried to regain control. "Zeus, heel!" he commanded, but his partner ignored him completely. The dog's focus was entirely on the boy, his barking growing more intense by the second. "All units, we have a situation at Gate 14. Officer Chen's voice crackled through the radio. 14 K9s are in alert formation around a minor. Requesting backup and supervisor on scene immediately." The boy pressed, himself back against the bench. His dinosaur backpack clutched against his chest like a shield. Tears began forming in his eyes, but he didn't run. He just sat there, overwhelmed by the chaos surrounding him. Airport security arrived first. Captain Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran, pushed through the growing crowd of onlookers. "What's the situation?" he demanded. Marcus shook his head, still fighting to control Zeus. "Unknown, sir. All dogs went into alert formation simultaneously. Target appears to be this child." Rodriguez looked at the boy, then at the circle of barking dogs. "Any adults with him?" "None visible, sir. He appears to be traveling alone." "Age?" "Maybe 6, 7 years old at most." The captain's expression grew more serious. Unaccompanied minors were always handled with extreme care, but this situation was unlike anything he'd seen in his career. The barking continued, drawing more and more attention. Passengers were now recording with their phones, some posting live videos to social media. Within minutes, the hashtag would start trending. But right now, in this moment, all that mattered was figuring out why 14 highly trained police dogs were treating a small child like the most important person in the entire airport. The boy looked up at Captain Rodriguez with eyes that seemed too old for his young face. "Are they going to hurt me?" he whispered. Rodriguez knelt down to the boy's eye level, his voice gentle despite the chaos around them. "No, son, they're not going to hurt you. Can you tell me your name?" "Tyler," the boy said quietly. "Tyler Washington." "Where are your parents, Tyler?" The boy's lip trembled. "I don't know. I'm supposed to find them." Rodriguez could see the fear in Tyler's eyes, but something else caught his attention. The boarding pass in the boy's small hands was wrinkled and worn, as if it had been folded and unfolded countless times. The edges were frayed, and there were what looked like tear stains on the paper. "Tyler, can I see your boarding pass?" Rodriguez asked gently. The boy hesitated, then slowly handed over the document. Rodriguez's eyes widened as he read it. The flight was scheduled for 3 days ago. This wasn't a current ticket. "Son, this flight already left. Where did you get this?" Tyler's voice was barely a whisper. "My mom gave it to me before she went to heaven. She said when I found Daddy, I should show him this so he'd know I was supposed to come home." The words hit Rodriguez like a punch to the chest. Around them, the dogs continued their urgent barking, but their formation had shifted. They were no longer just surrounding Tyler. They had positioned themselves facing outward, as if protecting him from the growing crowd. Officer Chen stepped closer, her German Shepherd Ranger still alerting intensely. "Captain, there's something else. Look at their body language. This isn't threat detection. This is protective behavior." Rodriguez studied the dogs more carefully. Chen was right. The animals weren't treating Tyler as a threat. They were treating him as someone who needed protection. But from what? Tyler, Rodriguez continued, his voice remaining calm and gentle. How long have you been here at the airport? The boy looked down at his sneakers. I don't know. A long time. I've been waiting. Waiting for what? For someone to help me find my daddy. Marcus finally managed to get Zeus to stop barking, but the dog remained intensely focused on Tyler. Captain, Marcus said, Zeus is trained for missing persons. He's never acted like this before, but his behavior is consistent with finding someone he's been searching for. Searching for? Rodriguez frowned. We don't have any active missing person alerts for this terminal. That's when Officer Janet Mills, a veteran with the airport's Family Services Unit, arrived on scene. She'd been monitoring the situation from the security office and had pulled Tyler's information from the airline's unaccompanied minor system. Captain, she said, slightly out of breath, I've been trying to track this child's status. He's not in our current system, but I found something in the archives. Tyler Washington was reported missing from Chicago 3 weeks ago. The crowd around them had grown larger, phones recording every moment. Social media was already buzzing with speculation. Some posts claimed the dogs had detected drugs. Others suggested the child was in danger, but nobody knew the truth yet. Mills continued. His mother, Sarah Washington, died in a car accident a month ago. Tyler was supposed to be placed with relatives, but he disappeared from the foster care facility before the transfer could be completed. Rodriguez felt his heart sink. This child had been living in the airport for weeks, surviving on scraps and the kindness of strangers, clutching an old boarding pass and hoping to find a father who might not even know his son was looking for him. Tyler, Rodriguez knelt down again. Have you been sleeping here? In the airport? The boy nodded slowly. Sometimes the nice lady at the coffee shop gives me food, and the man who cleans the floors lets me sleep in the corner when it's really late. I tried to be good and not bother anyone. Tears began streaming down Tyler's face, but he still didn't make a sound. The dogs, sensing his distress, moved closer. Zeus actually lay down next to the bench, his massive head resting near Tyler's feet in a gesture of comfort. Mills pulled Rodriguez aside. Captain, there's more. The father, James Washington, has been searching for Tyler since he disappeared. He's filed missing person reports in 4 states. He's been checking every airport, every bus station, every place he could think of. Where is he now? According to his last check-in with Chicago PD, he was headed here, to Denver. Someone at the foster facility remembered Tyler talking about his dad working at the airport here before he moved to Chicago to be with Tyler's mother. Rodriguez's radio crackled to life. Captain Rodriguez, we have a James Washington at the main security checkpoint. He's asking about a missing child alert and demanding to speak with someone in charge. The captain looked at Tyler, then at the 14 dogs who continued their protective vigil around the small boy. Everything was starting to make sense. These weren't just random alerts. The dogs had somehow detected something that connected Tyler to his father's search. Bring James Washington to Gate 14 immediately, Rodriguez ordered, and clear a path through this crowd. Tyler looked up with hope flickering in his eyes. Is my daddy coming? Before Rodriguez could answer, a commotion erupted near the security checkpoint. A man's voice could be heard shouting over the crowd noise, desperate and urgent. Tyler! Tyler, where are you? I'm here, son. Daddy's here. The dog's behavior changed instantly. Their barking stopped, replaced by excited whining and tail wagging. Zeus stood up, his body trembling with anticipation. All 14 dogs turned toward the sound of the approaching voice. Tyler dropped his dinosaur backpack and stood on the bench, scanning the crowd. Daddy? He called out, his small voice somehow carrying through the terminal noise. That's when they saw him. James Washington, a tall man in a wrinkled shirt and jeans, pushing through the crowd of onlookers. His eyes were red from exhaustion and worry, his hair disheveled from weeks of searching. But when he saw Tyler standing on that bench, surrounded by police dogs, his face transformed. Tyler! He shouted, breaking into a run. The crowd parted as James sprinted toward his son. The police dogs, as if understanding their mission was complete, stepped aside to create a clear path. Marcus had never seen anything like it in his 8 years of K-9 work. Tyler jumped down from the bench and ran toward his father, the old boarding pass still clutched in his small fist. The collision of their embrace sent both of them tumbling to the floor in a tangle of tears and laughter. The terminal erupted in applause. Passengers who had been recording with suspicion and concern were now capturing one of the most beautiful reunions anyone had ever witnessed. Even the hardened security officers found themselves wiping away tears, ping away tears. James held Tyler tight, his shoulders shaking with relief and exhaustion. 3 weeks of searching, 3 weeks of sleepless nights and endless phone calls had led to this moment. The old boarding pass that Tyler still clutched was now crumpled between them, but it had served its purpose. "I thought I'd lost you forever," James whispered into his son's hair. "I've been looking everywhere." Tyler pulled back just enough to look into his father's eyes. "I knew you'd find me, Daddy. Mommy said you always keep your promises." The mention of Sarah hit James hard, but he managed to smile through his tears. "Oh, she was right, son. I'll always find you." Captain Rodriguez approached the reunited family cautiously, not wanting to interrupt the moment, but knowing there were procedures to follow. The crowd around them had grown massive, with travelers from other gates abandoning their departure lounges to witness the extraordinary scene. Officer Mills stepped forward, her tablet in hand. "Mr. Washington, I need to verify some information, but given the circumstances, we can expedite the process." James nodded, still holding Tyler close. "Whatever you need. I have all his documents, photos, DNA records from the missing person report. I've been carrying everything with me for weeks." As Mills began the verification process, something remarkable was happening with the K-9 unit. The 14 dogs had formed a loose circle around the family, but their behavior was unlike anything the handlers had seen before. Instead of the rigid alertness they'd shown earlier, the animals were calm, almost peaceful. Several had actually laid down, their heads resting on their paws as if standing guard over a successful mission. Marcus knelt beside Zeus, running his hand through the German shepherd's fur. "I don't understand it," he said to Officer Chen. "Zeus has never reacted to a missing person case like this. It's like he knew Tyler was here before we even started the sweep." Chen shook her head in amazement. "Rangers the same way. Look at them all. They're not just calm, they're content, like they accomplished something important." Dr. Patricia Hayes, the airport's behavioral specialist, had arrived on scene to assess the situation. She'd worked with K-9 units for over 15 years, but what she was observing defied conventional understanding of K-9 behavior. "This is unprecedented," she murmured, taking notes on her tablet. 14 dogs from different units, with different specializations, all reacting to the same target simultaneously, and now they're exhibiting what can only be described as satisfaction behavior. James overheard the conversation and looked up from Tyler. "Excuse me, but what exactly happened here? Tyler just told me he's been sleeping in the airport for weeks. How did nobody notice him before today?" Captain Rodriguez exchanged glances with his officers. It was a fair question, and one that would require a thorough investigation. "Mr. Washington, we're still trying to piece that together ourselves. What we know is that your son somehow managed to survive in this terminal for 3 weeks, and today, for reasons we can't fully explain, every K-9 in our unit detected his presence simultaneously." Tyler tugged on his father's shirt. "Daddy, the dogs aren't scary. They were trying to help me. The big one with the black ears kept other people away when they were being mean." James looked at Zeus, who was still lying nearby, his intelligent eyes focused on Tyler. "What do you mean, son?" "Some people said bad things about me sleeping here. They wanted to call the police to take me away, but the dogs would come around sometimes, and those people would leave me alone." The implications of Tyler's words sent chills through everyone listening. This child had been invisible to the airport's security systems, but somehow the K-9 units had been passively protecting him for weeks without their handlers even realizing it. Dr. Hayes stepped closer to James. "Mr. Washington, this might sound unusual, but has Tyler ever had any special connection with animals? Any training or exposure that might explain this level of canine response?" James thought for a moment, then his expression softened. "My wife Sarah, she was a veterinary technician. Tyler spent a lot of time at her clinic growing up. The dogs there always seemed drawn to him, but we thought it was just because he was gentle with them. There might be more to it than that," Dr. Hayes said. "Some children develop an almost supernatural ability to communicate with animals, especially in times of extreme stress or trauma. Tyler's been through more than any child should have to endure." Officer Mills finished her verification process and approached the family. "Mr. Washington, everything checks out. Tyler is definitely your son, and you have legal custody. However, given the circumstances of his disappearance and the time he spent unaccounted for, we'll need to involve social services for a brief evaluation." James's face tightened with worry. "You're not taking him away from me again, are you?" "No, sir. This is just protocol. Given Tyler's remarkable survival and the unusual circumstances of today's events, everyone wants to make sure he's physically and emotionally healthy. It should only take a few hours." Tyler pressed closer to his father. "I don't want to go with strangers again, Daddy. I want to go home. You're coming home with me, son. I promise. We just need to answer some questions first, okay?" As the family prepared to leave with social services, something unexpected happened. Zeus stood up and walked directly to Tyler, sitting down in front of the boy and placing his massive paw on Tyler's small hand. The gesture was so deliberate, so human-like, that everyone watching fell silent. Tyler smiled and scratched behind Zeus's ears. "Thank you for watching over me," he whispered. Marcus felt his throat tighten as he watched his partner interact with the child. Zeus has never done anything like that before. He's usually all business. No personal attachments. Dr. Hayes was furiously taking notes. "This is extraordinary. The dog is displaying what appears to be a conscious acknowledgement of mission completion. It's almost like he's saying goodbye." One by one, the other 13 dogs approached Tyler. Not in their earlier formation pattern, but individually, each one offering a gentle nuzzle or a brief moment of contact. Ranger pressed his nose against Tyler's palm. Storm laid her head on his shoulder for just a moment. Even the more reserved dogs like Thor and Blaze stepped forward to acknowledge the boy. The crowd watched in stunned silence as 14 highly trained police dogs essentially said farewell to a 6-year-old boy who had somehow earned their protection and loyalty. James wiped tears from his eyes as he watched his son interact with each dog. "I don't understand what's happening here, but I know my boy is special. Sarah always said he had a gift." As they prepared to leave for the social services evaluation, Tyler suddenly turned back to Captain Rodriguez. "Sir, can I ask you something?" "Of course, son. The dogs helped me when I was scared and alone. Maybe they could help other kids too? Kids who are lost like I was?" Rodriguez knelt down to Tyler's level. "What do you mean?" Tyler's voice was quiet but confident. "I think they knew I needed help before anyone else did. Maybe they could find other kids who need help too." The suggestion hung in the air, and Rodriguez found himself genuinely considering it. The events of the day had challenged everything he thought he knew about K-9 capabilities. If Tyler was right, if the dogs had somehow detected his distress and need for protection over the course of weeks, it opened up entirely new possibilities for how they could use the K-9 units. Dr. Hayes stepped forward. "Tyler, that's a very smart observation. You might have given us an idea for a whole new way to help children." As the family walked toward the exit, escorted by social services and followed by a crowd of reporters who had somehow gotten wind of the story, Tyler turned one last time to wave at the dogs. All 14 animals watched him go, their tails wagging slowly in what could only be described as a respectful farewell. Marcus looked down at Zeus, who was still focused on Tyler's retreating figure. "What do you think, boy?" Did we just witness something that's going to change everything? Zeus gave a single, soft bark, then turned and walked back toward their patrol route, his mission finally complete. Within hours, videos of the reunion would be trending worldwide. News outlets would pick up the story of the boy who survived in an airport for weeks, and the dogs who somehow knew he needed protection. Child welfare organizations would study Tyler's case to better understand how vulnerable children could slip through the cracks of the system. But perhaps most importantly, airports across the country would begin training their K-9 units not just to detect threats and contraband, but to identify children in distress, creating an entirely new category of service that would save countless young lives. The ordinary morning at Denver International Airport had become anything but ordinary, and Tyler Washington, the 6-year-old boy who had captured the hearts of 14 police dogs and millions of viewers around the world, had unknowingly sparked a revolution in how society protects its most vulnerable members. But the story of Tyler Washington and the 14 police dogs was just beginning to ripple outward in ways no one could have predicted. As social services escorted Tyler and his father to a private conference room for their evaluation, something unprecedented was happening in the digital world. The first video had been uploaded by Maria Santos, a flight attendant who'd been on her break when the dogs surrounded Tyler. Her shaky phone footage captured the moment when all 14 animals formed their protective circle around the frightened child. Within 30 minutes, the video had been shared over 10,000 times. Then came the second video, filmed by businessman Robert Chen, showing the exact moment James Washington broke through the crowd to reach his son, the raw emotion of their reunion, the tears streaming down both their faces, the way Tyler clutched that crumpled boarding pass like a lifeline, struck something deep in viewers around the world. By evening, the hashtag Denver Airport Miracle was trending in 17 countries. News producers scrambled to piece together the full story. Phone calls flooded into Denver International Airport's media relations department. Every major network wanted exclusive interviews with the family, with the K-9 handlers, with anyone who had witnessed the extraordinary events. But inside that quiet conference room, Tyler was telling his story to Dr. Amanda Foster, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma cases. His father sat beside him, holding his small hand as Tyler recounted 3 weeks of survival that shouldn't have been possible for a 6-year-old child. "I wasn't always alone," Tyler said softly, his voice barely audible above the airport's distant hum. "The dogs would come by at night. Not all of them, but some of them. They never barked at me like they did today. They were quiet." Dr. Foster leaned forward, intrigued. "Which dogs, Tyler? Do you remember?" Tyler nodded toward the window, where Zeus and 2 other German shepherds were visible in the distance. The big one with the dark face, and the brown one with the white chest. They would sit with me when I was scared. James squeezed his son's hand. "Tyler, why didn't you tell anyone you needed help? There were so many people here who could have helped you." Tyler's eyes filled with tears again. "I tried, Daddy, but when I told the first man I was looking for you, he said I was lying. He said little boys don't travel alone, and that I was probably a runaway. He was going to call the police to take me to jail." The room fell silent. Dr. Foster made notes on her tablet, her expression growing more serious. "What happened after that?" "I hid. I found places where people wouldn't see me. The bathroom near the old gate that nobody uses anymore. The corner behind the big plant in the food court. I learned when the cleaning people came around, and I stayed out of their way." Tyler's survival instincts were remarkable for someone so young, but Dr. Foster recognized the psychological toll such an experience would take. The hypervigilance, the fear of authority figures, the way he'd learned to make himself invisible, these were survival mechanisms that could take years to overcome. "Tell me about the food, son," James said gently. "How did you eat?" Tyler looked down at his hands. "Sometimes people would leave food on their trays. Sandwiches they didn't finish, fruit they didn't want. I would wait until they left and then take what they didn't need. The lady at the coffee shop caught me once. But instead of being mad, she started leaving extra pastries near the trash can. She pretended she didn't see me take them. Dr. Foster's heart ached as she listened. This child had survived through a combination of remarkable resourcefulness and the unconscious kindness of strangers who never realized they were feeding a lost boy. Meanwhile, outside in the terminal, the canine handlers were conducting their own debriefing with Dr. Hayes. The behavioral specialist had never encountered anything like the morning's events, and she was determined to understand what had triggered such an unprecedented response from the dogs. "Marcus," she said to Zeus's primary handler, "you've worked with Zeus for 4 years. Has he ever shown any interest in children before today?" Marcus shook his head. "He's always been professional around kids, friendly but not particularly drawn to them. But today was different. It was like he recognized Tyler specifically." Officer Chen, who handled Ranger, nodded in agreement. "Same with Ranger. He's bomb detection trained. Not search and rescue, but his behavior around that boy was identical to Zeus's. It doesn't make sense according to their training protocols." Dr. Hayes pulled up the airport's security footage on her tablet. "I've been reviewing the surveillance tapes from the past 3 weeks. Look at this." She showed them a grainy black and white image from 2 weeks earlier, time-stamped at 2:47 a.m. On the screen, a small figure could be seen curled up in a corner near Gate 18, and sitting nearby, clearly visible despite the poor lighting, was a dog that looked remarkably like Zeus. "That's impossible," Marcus said. "Zeus was off duty that night. He was at home with me." Dr. Hayes swiped to another image, this one from a week ago. Same corner, same small figure, but this time there were 2 dogs visible in the frame. "Gentlemen, I think we need to consider the possibility that your K9s have been conducting unauthorized patrols. These images suggest they've been aware of Tyler's presence for much longer than any of us realized." The implications were staggering. If the dogs had somehow been checking on Tyler during off-duty hours, it suggested a level of independent decision-making and emotional intelligence that challenged everything they understood about canine behavior. Back in the conference room, Tyler was describing his most frightening moment during his 3 weeks of survival. "There was this man," Tyler said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "He came around a lot, especially at night. He would look at kids and follow them sometimes. He tried to talk to me once, said he could help me find my parents, but something felt wrong." James's protective instincts flared. "What happened then?" "The dogs came. Not just 1 or 2, but a lot of them. They didn't bark, but they stood between me and the man. He left really fast and never came back." Tyler's story became more than just a viral video. It sparked a nationwide conversation about missing children, airport security, and the incredible bond between humans and animals. Within months, the Tyler Protocol was implemented at airports across the country, training K9 units to identify children in distress. Hundreds of missing kids have been found because of what happened that day at Gate 14. Sometimes heroes don't wear badges or uniforms. Sometimes they have 4 paws and hearts bigger than we ever imagined. And sometimes, a 6-year-old boy's courage to survive changes everything.